I got rid of thousands of books. 5 floor-to-ceiling bookcases became 10 boxes. And if you've watched any of my recent videos, you already know that. You've heard me talk about donating books, clearing shelves, getting rid of books and stuff, and apparently committing crime against booktube according to a small but passionate selection of the internet. But I want to talk about the books that survived, because I think that's the interesting part. Anyone can put books in boxes, anyone can take a book to a charity shop. The difficult part is deciding what stays. And what surprised me is that almost none of those decisions weren't really based on logic or money. Some of the books I kept were valuable. My J. Christoph hardbacks, Nevernight, stuff like that, definitely. A few special editions survived, some signed stuff survived. Some rare things and historical things survived. And my beautiful leather-bound Lord of the Rings set my mum bought me definitely survived. And I say leather with big fat air quotes around it. But if I'm honest, most of the books that made it through the Great Purge, well, they survived for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with value. Most of them survived because of memory and stories. I think that's the thing that I've realised over the last few months. I wasn't really sorting books, I was sorting through versions of myself. That sounds far deeper than I intended it to sound, but it's true. When you've been collecting books for God knows how many years, your shelves become a timeline. You can point to entire sections and remember exactly who you were when you bought them. That shelf was university, that shelf was my horror phase, that shelf was me trying to convince myself that I'd become the sort of person who read Russian literature every weekend. Spoiler alert, I did not become that person. I tried, I gave it a fair shot. But apparently my natural state of reading is Japanese fiction, manga, classics, books about theology, and occasionally 3 hours researching Pokemon cards when I absolutely do not need to. Life takes strange turns. The weird thing about clearing out books is when you start picking them up one by one and realizing some of them don't belong to you anymore. Obviously, they're still yours. They're sitting in your house. They're physically there. You paid for them, but emotionally, that connection is gone. They belong to someone else that I used to know. That's a really strange feeling. Because for years, I thought being a reader meant keeping everything, every book, every memory, every version of yourself. But the older I get, the more I genuinely think that's just rubbish. Sometimes moving forward means accepting that not everything needs to come with you. Some books changed my life. Some books were important for 6 months. Some books were bought because everyone else was reading them, and some books were bought because I was trying to fit into a community. Some books, and if I'm being completely honest, were bought because BookTube in 2017 convinced all of us we needed 17 copies of the same novel with different covers and different edges. Strange era. A very, very strange era. The books that survived were the books that still mean something. Sometimes that meaning has absolutely nothing to do with the story itself. For example, one of the books that survived was my ARC, Advanced Reader copy of Nevernight that I won on Goodreads. That thing was never leaving. Not because it's rare, it's not valuable, I don't think, although if I post it on the internet, my god, the DMs. Because it's the first review copy I ever received. I remember opening that package, and I remember the excitement. I remember feeling like maybe I'd actually managed to build something online. That little ARC wasn't just a book, it's a memory. Proof that a younger version of me stuck with something long enough that something actually good happened. Apparently I'm sentimental enough these days to keep that. Which is slightly annoying because younger me would have mocked older me relentlessly for saying stuff like this. And then there were the books that were my mum's. Her art books, her history books. These books have been around for so long, I genuinely can't remember a time when they weren't in the house. Those books aren't going anywhere. They're landmarks. They're part of the landscape. The same way certain photographers stop being photographers after a while. They become part of the culture of language, and then you have their prints, their photographs, they're part of your life. It's weird. So I know that's a weird analogy, but it's the best one I got. You stop seeing them until you imagine them gone. And suddenly you realise they're irreplaceable. Those books aren't going anywhere, ever. The same thing happened with the books, the Twilight Saga that my friend Emma left me. Now, I know some people are probably laughing, because after all the books in the world, the books that became precious are Twilight. But here's the thing, they're not really books anymore, they're Emma's books. They're filled with notes, faults, reactions, her handwriting in the margins. Tiny pieces of somebody who hasn't been here for a decade. I miss her. And it's a little piece of her. And every now and then I pick one up and I find a comment scribbled in the margins, and for a second I feel like she's still in the room. That's a difficult thing to explain to people who only see books as stories. Sometimes books become containers for memory. Sometimes they become conversations, and sometimes they become time machines. If you ever lost someone, you know exactly what I mean. Those books like that in general, my mum's books, Emma's books, my grandmother's books, they survive without question. There's never a discussion. And there's never a maybe. And there's never a moment where you put them in a donation pile, not for a second. Another thing I discovered is I kept a lot of my weird books, genuinely weird books, sort of books where visitors pick them up and immediately ask, why do you own this? And the answer is they're actually very good. Well, usually they're actually very good questions. I have books that are basically art objects, photography, you name it. Books that are more like sculptures than novels. Books I bought because they were beautiful from art exhibits. You know what? I don't regret that at all. I think one of the worst things readers do is to pretend every book has to justify its existence intellectually. Sometimes a book is important because it changed your life. Sometimes it's important because it taught you something. And sometimes it's important because it's weird and beautiful and makes you happy when you look at it. That's enough. You're allowed to enjoy things. We are. Don't let anyone tell you you're not. I feel like the internet forgets occasionally. It forgets that completely, actually. Not even occasionally. The strangest moment during this whole process wasn't donating the books, it was the afterwards. It's standing in a room and realising 5 bookshelves have become 10 boxes. Not even large boxes. And for a second I genuinely thought I made a mistake. I looked at them and thought, surely there should be more. Surely 20 plus years of reading should take up more space than this. And then I started opening the boxes and packing things. And every single book meant something. Every single one. Not because they're masterpieces. Some aren't rare and they're not expensive. But because they had a reason and have a reason to be in my collection. I know why I own them. I know why they matter. And that's when I realised I hadn't reduced my library, I refined it. The library got smaller. The meaning got bigger. I kept all my Sue Townsend books. I love Sue Townsend. Adrian Mole, yes. I own everything she's ever written. She still makes me laugh in a way very few writers can. I kept my Hunger Games hardbacks. Partly because I genuinely love those books, judge me all you want, and partly because they followed me around for years. They've survived a lot of moves, life changes, different jobs, different relationships, different versions of me. Some books stayed. I kept my philosophy books, my theology books, photography books, art books. And it's not because I'm studying them, and it's definitely, I don't need them, but because they make me curious, and curiosity is a pretty good reason to keep something. Maybe that's this whole experience comes down to, not whether a book is good, not whether it's valuable, whatever, and not just because someone on the internet thinks you need to keep it, it's worth keeping. The question is simple. Does it mean something to you? Because if it does, keep it. If it makes you happy, keep it. I hate the phrase sparks joy. I always have. It sounds like something printed on a decorative kitchen sign next to live, laugh, love. But the basic idea is right. Keep the things that genuinely add something to your life. Not the things you feel guilty about. Not the things you're keeping out of obligation. Not the things you're keeping because you spent money on them 15 years ago. The things that matter And here's the other thing. I genuinely believe books have second lives. I know, hippy dippy. Some people laugh at me for saying this. But I do. When a book leaves your shelf, that's not the end of its story. Someone will find it. Somebody will might buy it. Somebody will read it. Somebody will fall in love with it. Maybe they'll pass it on too. Books are meant to move. They're meant to travel. They're meant to find new readers. That's part of the magic. I don't miss thousands of books. I don't miss them. That's also another thing. Definitely miss a few. Maybe I'll regret a handful later on. I think everyone does. But mostly I feel relief. Because for the first time in a very long time, every book I own feels intentional. Every book has earned its place. Every book that survived. The books that stayed. The books that attach to memories, to people. The books attached to different versions of myself, maybe. And maybe that's what a personal library really is. Not a collection of books, but a collection of stories about your life. Some of them just happen to have pages, right? If you like this content, I'm Darv James. And if you want to get more involved, you're welcome to become a channel member, join my Patreon, leave a comment, like, hit that hype button. Tell me your stories. I want to know them. What books defined you? Tell me 5 books that defined you.